All right, so before we start, I want to say that most of these updates are confirmed or they're in testing. And the real hack for everybody is going to be to find the best way to organically use them in your content strategy. Because first movers advantage is a real thing on these apps, right? That means using the features will usually give the platform the data and the feedback that they're looking for. So therefore your content typically can see a boost in distribution, right? Maybe not anything super natural, but something a little bit gradual because they have a desire to get the data and the feedback from people who are using these features. So we're gonna run through these features. I'm not gonna waste a lot of time. I'm gonna jump right into it, right? First off, your grid feed. It's going from 1 to 1, meaning a perfect square, to 4 to 5, right? So more of a rectangle. Now, most creators will tell you that this is an old feature and something that we should have known or whatever the case may be for a while, but it seems like now they're adding the ability to kind of choose the size that you want the post or your photo to be. So to me, this basically means that photographers, you guys are no longer going to have to worry about cropping, right? You can do that directly in the app. But what it really means is more real estate for messaging, specifically in like the carousels feature, right? To me, this is huge because when you're scrolling, 4-5 is going to allow you to not see what's above or below. So that means the main focus is on what you're posting and creating, right? And so I like this. I've already started posting carousels in 4-5, but I'll tell you, the thing that I've noticed about carousels in terms of reach is that I typically get more reach when I add a video element to the carousel. It seems to really help with performance for some reason. Now this does bring me to the first of the rumor mill, right? So this is not confirmed. This is something that is a rumor mill, and that's going to be dwell time. Dwell time is the amount of time that a user spends on a post, right, without touching the screen. Now, this was a major factor back in the day, and it's something that's recently been adopted to LinkedIn posts, right, as a metric in terms of distribution. And so I don't have any confirmation as to whether or not this is going to play a major role in Instagram. But the word around the water cooler is that this is a factor. Again, strictly a rumor, but something that I will be testing. And if the data is substantial, I'll try my best to make a post about it. But if I don't get to it, it's probably only going to live in the SOS Club, which is where I put, that's my private community, as where I put all of the facts and the findings, as well as my specific strategy that I'm using. I put it right inside that private community for people who want to know more and stay up to date about changes on the platform, things that I think are going to work, all of that stuff. So if I don't make an actual live post about it, it will be in the SOS Club. If you're interested in joining, that link is in my bio. But let's jump on to change number 2, which is the biggest change probably, which is in distribution, right? Mosseri himself came out, the head of Instagram, and said that right now, shares is the number 1 metric to be considered with your content, but specifically shares per reach. So the amount of people who actually see your content and decide to share it, right? And this is a very big factor in terms of how soon the shares happen. So when it shows your content, right, that first boost of distribution, it's really a big factor for how many of those people decide to share it. Now, here's the key factor that I've seen in terms of data, right? It seems that sends is the bigger metric. Sends meaning sending that post to a specific user as opposed to just sharing it to your story feed, right? I've tested this for a bit. And it just really seems that people like posts that get sent specifically are doing a lot better in terms of distribution than things that just get shared to the story feed.
One of the most important signals we use in ranking is sends per reach. So out of all the people who saw your reel or your photo, how many of them sent it to a friend in a DM?
Now this is very interesting to me, right? Because I've also noticed that conversational style posts are performing better on Threads, right? And so post that garners conversation, whether it's people saying, hey, I need assistance with this, I'm looking for this type of person, whatever, or just asking a question that a ton of people can weigh in on. This is really a high signal to me because they're focusing on conversational style on Threads and sends and shares on Instagram. It's telling me that Meta is really looking and really highly concerned with making these platforms community driven, right? With so many people that are using these platforms for business, it's easy to get caught up and feel like it's really only built for advertising your product or service. And so I think that I personally will be leaning into more community driven content for both myself and my clients. But again, shares and sends are currently the number one metric that determine your distribution on this platform. So definitely want to be creating some shareable content. I have a post on my feed that talks about creating shareable content. I'll probably be making another one shortly, just talking about the best way to create shareable content. Probably one of the biggest changes that we'll see is that accounts reached will now turn into views. And this is going to happen across all forms of media. So whether it be a single post, whether it be a carousel, whether it be a quote post or a reel, right? So it seems like we'll start to see more even distribution across all media types. Now, I've done some scrolling and I have seen some carousels actually start to pop up as reels, but it's only the ones that add music to the media. So if you are making carousel posts and it's something that you want to see, get a lot of distribution across the platform, my suggestion is always going to be to add some music. This is probably the only place that you'll see me personally start to use trending audio because it is something that people are a little bit more familiar with. Be very careful with that, because if it's an older trend, then a lot of people will get tired of it and typically try to scroll away from it. But I will be adding music to all of my carousel posts, because again, I am starting to see them show up in the Reels feed. So when I'm scrolling and I'm looking at Reels, there happens to be a few times where I'll scroll and I'll get a carousel. And so again, this is signaling to me that they're trying to even out the distribution across all forms of media for the viewer. And so that does bring me to the next change, which is carousels. You can now post 20 pictures. I don't know why you would want to do that. Maybe if you're a photographer and you got something to show and that's very, very interesting to you, you like, yo, let me show you everything that I've done that's really dope. And I love that for you guys, but I don't think that I'll be needing that in order to convey my messaging, right? In order to do storytelling, things of that nature, because we know that we want to make sure that people are like scrolling all the way to the end. And the attention span right now, there's just so many other things that can grab people's attention. I don't want to ask for too much of it. So if I can tell the story in a shorter framework, right, and less slides, I'm probably going to use that. But again, you can post up to 20 pictures on a carousel. Always, my suggestion would be to add some music. And this is one of those things that has yet to be added to all accounts that I currently run or manage, but I have seen some screenshots of what to expect. And a few of my accounts do have the ability to add 20 pictures. So again, be on the lookout for that. It may not be for everybody. If you're not seeing some of these updates, feel free to update the app, possibly delete it from your phone, re-download it. I've seen that to help people to see a change, right? People in the SOS Club have been like, hey, I don't see this update. They'll delete the app, they come back and it is there. So play around with that if you're looking for some of these updates, right? Make sure that your app is definitely up to date. Now, in terms of updates that not everybody has and the people in my SOS Club were able to unlock is the share feature, right? This is the little button where you can actually leave a comment on someone else's post and have it shared to only the people that you follow back, right? This is a very big feature, and I really like this one. Right, and I'll tell you why in a few, but I do want to remind you guys that this is another reason that I feel as though they're really trying to add community features, right? Because we already know that the notes that you leave can only be seen by people who you follow, right? And so now this is another feature that can only be seen by people who you follow back, so mutual followers. And so all of those accounts, right, that anybody who's got an account with a bunch of followers and you're only following 20 people, right, you're not gonna be able to properly maximize on this ability. And so here's the biggest hack, right? One of the things that I've been doing is I'm going to be sharing, and I have already done this, I'm sharing older posts that I want to get a boost in views, right? So when I get new followers that come in, right, I'm gonna go back and start sharing and leaving comments on some of my older posts. And I can tell you, it definitely does work. So if you have any posts that are like selling a product or a service, right, something that you wanna advertise, and you get an influx of followers one day, it might be very wise for you to follow some of them back, right? The people who could be your potential buyers, right? And go share. Do a little share spree so that they don't have to scroll all the way down the timeline just to see that info. And this will kind of refresh some of your posts directly to them, right? So that's how I'm going to be using this feature for myself and my clients. And I definitely invite you guys to do the same. I do think though, there's also credence and good value in you doing the same thing with other posts that maybe are something that you're more interested in, right? But not something that you want to create content around, right? For example, for me, I'm very interested in tech and AI. I don't talk a lot about that stuff on my content, so it might be a little bit easier for me to find some of the people whose accounts that I follow and really like, and maybe just add a note to their content. This way, again, whenever human beings get put onto something, right, or you're showing them something new, even if you're not the originator or the creator, they still tend to associate that new knowledge to you because you brought it to them. So using this feature is a good way to be able to do that, to give some more insight and to add some more value to your audience without you having to actually be the creator. Now, in that same field of, right, people who you follow back, stories now have the ability to live longer. There's a new feature that they're testing and it's called Lately, where basically your stories will show up as highlights to your viewers. Now, this is not something that's available for all accounts, but I've already started to use a strategy where I'm actually advertising some of my reels inside of the stories by making them just a slightly different video, right? So for the Instagram video that I did for this, the stories version of it is really just going to be like a rundown, right? None of the details. It's just going to give you guys very like sharp, here's what this video is about. So I'm using my stories like as if it's a trailer, right? Another key feature you want to do with your stories, if you really want to maximize on the views, let your stories reset for 24 to 48 hours, right? I try to stick to like 48 hours without posting on my stories, and then I'll post, and I'm always seeing a huge spike in my distribution for my stories. So that's something that I'm doing. That's something that I'm inviting you guys to do. But again, your stories do now have the ability to live longer, right, with this feature called Lately. And I've already seen this pop up on my feed for some of the people who I follow. Their stories will kind of just stay there as a highlight, and you'll see it. It'll be from like 2 days ago, 3 days ago, things of that nature. So definitely something that I want to invite you guys to do. And if you want to know more about my strategy that I'm doing to kind of advertise my reels, follow me on Threads. I've spoken about it over there a little bit, and I'll be speaking about it some more. But speaking of highlights, I'm also going to be moving my highlights to feature some of my favorite reels that I want my newer followers to see. Because stories is the most intimate connecting mechanism that we have in terms of, right, content, right? It's the easiest way to get an intimate connection with your new followers. The people who are viewing your stories typically want more from you. And so I'm using this to show, I'm going to be using my highlights feature, right, to advertise some of my best known or the reels that I want people to know me for directly on the top. Because that's like the first thing that they're going to do when they come to follow you, right? They're going to see your bio, they're going to see your highlights. And so I'm going to be using that to really just showcase some of the reels that I think people should know me for. And so this is just another strategic hack that I'm using that will help me to gain an advantage in my marketing. And now, speaking of what your followers see and don't see, we have a very interesting new secret feature that is being tested, and it's called experiment mode. Basically, it's a little bit confusing in terms of effectiveness and what this is for. Especially for distribution, because it's basically your ability to not have your followers see your reels, and the reel will only go out to people who don't follow you, which again, confusing, because why would I ever want my content to not be seen by my followers unless I'm pivoting the content and I'm creating something new that I don't typically create. I think maybe that could be the benefit of that. I don't really understand what the thought process was for that. But nevertheless, it's there, and there is an option, right? Or at least the features that I'm seeing. I don't have access to this yet, but I've spoken to some creators who do. And there is an option that's rolling out where, like, in the first 48 hours, you can only show it to outside, followers, and then you can let your followers see it after 48 hours. Confusing, but it does tell me that the first 48 hours of posting in terms of reels is apparently the most crucial, right? In terms of how well the reel performs and where it gets the distribution to. So my strategy here is I'm going to be posting very strategically, right, following a recent reel that I posted. So now that I know that the first 48 hours is very crucial, every time I post a reel, those following 48 hours, I'm gonna do some things that are very strategic to help boost that reel's reach and engagement. And so stay tuned for some of the ideas that I have for that. Now, lastly, is a very new up and coming feature for locations. This is a rip straight off of Snapchat. It's an attempt, in my opinion, just to attract more usage from a younger audience. Because to be honest with you, if I'm posting anything about my location, I've probably already left. But I will try my best to start using this on whichever account gets access to it first. And then I'll double back with the data. Now, I will say, as somebody who used to own a brick and mortar business, I do think that this will be crucial for brick and mortar locations, right? Because you can now do things like check-ins or activations. And, I would probably incentivize people to actually use this feature, right? I'd create like a loyalty program where, like, hey, if you came to my shop, make sure you tag us in the location. And, if you do it 10 times, then you'll get added to a feature where you get a raffle to get a free this, or, you'll get a discount, or whatever the case may be. Something that incentivizes people to want to utilize my location as often as possible. Because again, Instagram's really focused on community and trying to have people, trying to give people a reason to converse, right, about one particular thing and to connect over something. And it's very easy for us to connect on locations. Also, with Instagram trying to take over as much search as possible, I think that this is a very big play for that, because people can now search for whatever type of business it is that they're looking for. And using this location feature will help your business pop up as number one, even if you're probably not the most popular, right? But if you've got the most tags, I think that will help you in terms of ranking when people are searching for whatever type of business it is or service it is that you provide. And so that's pretty much all I got for today. And in the meantime, in between time, let's always get to the bag and beyond. Do remember to check out the SOS Club if you're interested. Link is going to be in the description, and I'm out.